Victor Hugo stood at a point where ambition stopped being a dream and started being a schedule. He had a major book to deliver, and the time left on the calendar kept shrinking. He knew what he wanted to write, but wanting it and producing it were not the same thing. Days filled up with small obligations, quick errands, and familiar habits that quietly stole hours. The work did not move fast enough, and the deadline did not care. He tried the normal solutions first. He meant to start early, then started later. He planned a steady pace, then lost it after one distraction. The more pressure he felt, the easier it became to avoid the page because the page now carried consequences. That loop created its own trap. Delay made the task heavier, and the heavier it felt, the easier delay seemed. Hugo reached a blunt conclusion. His usual routines failed him. So he treated writing less like inspiration and more like enforcement. If his willpower could not protect the work, he needed a system that could. Not a gentle schedule, but a rule strong enough to hold even on bad days. He began looking for a drastic kind of discipline, something that removed options instead of asking for motivation. The goal stayed simple and urgent: show up every day, produce pages, and finish on time. He did not look for inspiration in new places. He did the opposite. He started cutting himself off. If ordinary life kept pulling him away, then ordinary life had to lose access to him. Visits became unlikely. Social invitations stopped getting answers. Messages, errands, and small obligations no longer shaped his day. This was not a mood. It was a plan. He treated distraction like an enemy that had to be locked out. With that decision, his workdays stopped being flexible. They became built around one thing: being alone with the manuscript. He arranged his time so he did not drift into conversation, entertainment, or spontaneous plans. He did not wait to feel ready. He made readiness the default. Each day pointed back to the pages, again and again, until the only normal activity left was writing. Isolation turned from an idea into a schedule. The effect was immediate and simple. When no one could reach him, he did not have to keep choosing between work and life. The choice disappeared. There was only the manuscript and the hours placed beside it. Even when motivation weakened, the setup kept him in position. He could not easily escape into social noise because he had removed the path to it. He disciplined his world first, so his mind had fewer exits. The isolation still left one escape route. He could always decide to go out, so he added a rule that sounded almost ridiculous, and that was exactly the point. He removed his clothes and had them taken away, not folded nearby, not within reach, gone. In that moment, leaving the house stopped being a casual option. Without clothes, the outside world demanded a step he could not take. That choice turned nudity into a practical lock. It did not inspire him. It cornered him. Procrastination often looked like movement. One errand, one visit, one quick distraction that somehow grew. He cut off the first step. If he felt the urge to flee the page, he faced an immediate problem. He could not appear in public. Staying in became the only respectable decision. The rule worked because it made avoidance inconvenient in the most direct way possible. He no longer negotiated with himself about willpower or motivation. The barrier was physical, immediate, and a little humiliating. And that discomfort carried a message he could not ignore. The manuscript came first. With his clothes removed, the day narrowed to a single path. He sat down. He wrote. The rules stopped being an idea and became a day. He sat down and stayed there, because the usual escape routes no longer worked. There was no quick errand, no sudden visit, no respectable way to step outside and let the hours vanish. So the work filled the time instead. He wrote in long runs, not waiting to feel ready. The routine did what willpower had not. He allowed only the smallest comforts, just enough to keep his body from becoming the main problem. Anything more turned into permission to drift. With fewer choices, the day simplified. Start, continue, finish a section, then begin again. The pages stopped arriving in bursts, followed by silence. They came with regularity. The method looked strange from the outside, but inside the schedule it produced something he needed: dependable progress. That change showed up quickly in the numbers he could see. A morning no longer ended with doubt about what he had done. An afternoon no longer depended on a sudden mood. He had a system that pulled words out of him even when he felt stubborn or tired. The manuscript moved forward in steady steps day after day, and the uncertainty that had haunted his workdays gave way to a routine that simply kept going. As the pages piled up, the outside world did not stay outside. His publisher waited not for a quirky experiment, but for a finished book on a promised schedule. The calendar tightened into a deadline he could not argue with. Rumours of his withdrawal started to spread, and curiosity followed. Pressure arrived from every direction. Now the isolation did not just protect his time, it tested his credibility. Each day of delay carried a price. A late manuscript meant disappointed backers, lost momentum, and a public sense that he had overreached. The method stopped looking clever and started looking risky. If he emerged empty-handed, people would not remember the effort, they would remember the failure. That was the new weight on the routine, not comfort versus discipline, but success versus humiliation. So the rules tightened in his mind. Staying inside, staying at the desk, staying unable to wander off became less of a self-made challenge and more of a last line of defense. The clock kept moving whether he wrote or not. Every hour he protected became an hour he could turn into pages, and every page became proof. He had to deliver because the alternative was public collapse. Then something shifted. The pages started to come faster, not in a burst of inspiration, but in a steady, repeatable way. One finished section led cleanly into the next, and the manuscript stopped feeling like a wall. The rules did not create talent, but they created motion. He stayed in place because leaving stayed impossible. That simple limit turned hesitation into work. The breakthrough did not arrive as a miracle. It arrived as math. Fewer exits meant fewer detours, and fewer detours meant more hours spent on the same task. Every time the urge to postpone appeared, the system removed the usual escape routes. No quick errand, no social visit, no wandering the city to reset the mood. The only available action kept returning him to the page. As the stack of written pages grew, confidence followed because proof replaced hope. He did not need to guess whether he could finish. He saw the distance shrinking day after day. Momentum became its own pressure, the good kind, the kind that made stopping feel harder than continuing. The plan had done what it promised. Less temptation meant less negotiation, and less negotiation meant more writing. As the pages came faster, the method started demanding payment. Hours of writing without the option to step outside turned simple fatigue into a daily problem. His body had to sit, focus, and repeat, even when it clearly wanted to stop. And because he had made escape impossible, every weak moment became a test. The rules did not care about mood. They only cared about output. Discomfort stopped being a funny detail and became a real obstacle. When he felt cold, when he felt restless, when his mind slowed down, he still had to stay with the work. He had cut off the usual small rewards that helped people recover, like a walk or a visit. So he managed exhaustion the only way left, by pushing through it in place, one paragraph at a time, without changing the terms. The longer it went on, the more the discipline turned into a fight against himself. He could not negotiate with the plan, because the plan was built to prevent negotiation. If he bent the rules once, the whole structure weakened and the delays could return. So he learned to live inside the strain, tired hands, a foggy mind, and a constant urge to quit. He stayed anyway. That was the cost. The final stretch arrived, and the system finally got tested for what it promised. Day after day, he stayed locked into the same narrow choice: write or sit and wait. There was no quick escape, no respectable errand to run, no easy way to turn nervous energy into anything but work. The pages kept moving, and the deadline stopped feeling like a threat and started feeling reachable. As the last pieces came together, the pressure shifted. It was no longer about proving he could begin or survive the routine. It was about finishing cleanly before time ran out. He pushed through the remaining sections with the kind of focus that only made sense inside that self-made trap. Then it happened. The manuscript reached the point where it was done. The practical goal had been met on schedule, and with the work completed, the rules finally lost their purpose. The tension that had held everything in place started to release because the consequences had changed. The clothes could come back without risking a sudden disappearance into the world. The door could open again without stealing hours from the page. What had been a cage turned back into a home. The method ended the moment it succeeded. After publication, the book stood on its own, moving through readers' hands as a finished thing, polished, confident, inevitable. But another story travelled with it. People repeated the detail that sounded impossible to forget. Hugo wrote under a rule so strict he even stripped himself of the option to step outside. The odd discipline turned into a shortcut explanation. Not just talented, they said. Unstoppable. The more the work gained status, the more that private routine became a public symbol. It changed how his genius got described. The pages looked like inspiration, but the legend insisted it was control. The message was simple and easy to retell. He forced the writing to happen, and once that idea caught on, it reshaped his image from gifted author to machine of willpower. Yet the real method never matched the clean story people loved. The finished book sounded grand. The process stayed awkward and practical. It depended on small humiliations and rigid limits, not on glamour. A cultural artifact came out the front, ready for history. A strange private bargain stayed behind the scenes, where deadlines, discomfort and routine did the work no myth could fully admit. In the years that followed, the strange rule stopped being only a rumour about one desperate deadline. It turned into a reference point. People repeated it whenever they argued about discipline, focus, and the price of getting important work done. His choice sounded simple and absurd at once. Remove the option to escape, and the pages appeared. It felt like a dare that still challenged modern habits. As productivity culture grew, his tactic kept resurfacing in new language. It got framed as removing friction, controlling the environment, eliminating temptation. But the darker reading never disappeared. The same story also sounded like obsession wearing a clever mask. If a person had to trap himself to create, what did that say about the pressure to produce? The method inspired, and it warned at the same time. What stayed most visible in the end was not the locked-in routine, but the work that arrived because of it. The isolation that once shrank his world down to a single task contrasted sharply with the public life of the finished book afterward, moving freely through readers and generations. The odd discipline survived as trivia and debate, yet his stature endured as something sturdier. The pages outlived the method.